Tom Henderson over on Insider Gaming tweeted about Call of Duty's pivot to open world single player campaigns, but in there was the revelation that Call of Duty 2025 doesn't actually have a main developer right now. And in a follow-up tweet, he said, quote, as mentioned in this article, the one on the COD going open world, currently Call of Duty 2025, 20 months from release, does not have an assigned main developer. It's my understanding that it was meant to be Sledgehammer Games, but following on from the 16-month development cycle of MW3, they basically refused and didn't want to become a 2-year support studio. High Moon Studios was in the running at one point to be the main developer of this new game, and he says it's unclear if that's still the case, which would have made it the 4th studio ever to mainline a Call of Duty game, but I believe that it's likely going to fall to Treyarch Games in the end. Infinity Ward is already developing Call of Duty 2026, and Sledgehammer Games recently got the green light to develop Call of Duty 2027, as per my previous reporting. And yeah, Treyarch is doing the game this year, which is Call of Duty Gulf War, which thankfully they've had 4 years to develop, because Treyarch has been called in to, put out fires for the past 5 years.
Yeah.
You know? I noted down that Call of Duty Cold War was originally a Sledgehammer and I think Raven Software co-production. That didn't pan out. Treyarch was brought in as the main developer on that. Then Sledgehammer Games was put to work on Vanguard, which it had about 2 years to do, I think. And then, of course, it's just been on the short end of the stick once again, having, how many was it? 18 months, 16 months to develop MW3, which was originally a DLC and not a premium release.
You could so tell.
And it's Call of Duty has always had an issue with its studios just bearing the brunt of these boneheaded decisions by the upper brass. So in one sense, I'm actually really pleased, if this is true, that Sledgehammer has just gone, you've screwed us around too much. We just want to have the time and the resources to make a game. However, if that falls to Treyarch to then plug this gap for Call of Duty 2025, that also sucks. The simple answer, I think, and I'm not a businessman, I don't make $400 million.
I may not be a big city businessman.
I make $400 million a year in dividends. I wish I did. But surely, take a year off. Have
Gap
1 year off. Have a gap year.
Kind of Call of Duty. Do you want to just take a minute?
You were kind of going to do that last year anyway. Have a gap year and just let everyone kind of recalibrate. Catch a minute. A lot has happened the past 5 years. I'm not sure if you guys know. Why can't you just take Call of Duty off the rails for 1 year?
I wonder, that whole thing with Modern Warfare 3 and the open world levels that they brought in.
The open combat.
Yeah, open combat, which was like just a way of sort of like, giving you these big open spaces and then separating the encounter, having little pockets of enemies in different places. And it was very obvious that was the case. And whatever, you can say, some people enjoyed that, some people didn't. I wonder how much that thing was a last minute reality of getting something over the finish line. But because it's still sold well enough, you have the people at the top going like, well, you can just do that again and again and again and again.
The devs were saying that they were given, from what I saw, it was Sledgehammer who did Modern Warfare 3's campaign. It was Infinity Ward who did the campaign.
No, it was Sledgehammer.
I think what they said was that they were given enough time to make this what they wanted to, but
that was in the middle of the firestorm.
Yeah, like it very much like the scars of development really kind of were evident there.
Yeah, I get like it's always the thing. Multiple things are true. Like the people who worked on this obviously gave their heart and soul, sweat and tears into it, and they got something over the finish line that still sold very, very well and plays immaculately from what you played. It's just the reality of the things they had to sacrifice in regards to what COD's known for, like the set pieces, or a more curated campaign. Like there are so many plot holes in Modern Warfare 3's story, like things like that are very obvious.
Yeah, I mean, there was another Bloomberg report from Jason Schreier that dropped just after Modern Warfare 3 launched, and that kind of went into detail about how the initial plan for the campaign was a more streamlined side story, and then when it was turned into a full sequel, apparently that's when the executives came in and said, we need this to be about, Makarov and Soap, and we need to tie it in more directly to number 2. I don't know necessarily how they ended up on the open world element. That might have always been the plan in some form, perhaps, but it's just so evident, like Ewan said, that game bears the scars of its fractured development. The fact that even those open pockets are just redesigned areas from Verdansk, which was the Warzone map for Modern Warfare 2019. It's just it's for their first jump into that kind of a more experimental style of campaign design, it was not the way to go about it. It is clarified in the report that apparently whatever this year's Call of Duty is going to be, Gulf War, if that's the eventual title, that's apparently being built from the ground up to accommodate a more open world style of play. I think they even reference Far Cry as a point of comparison. But I don't think is that what people are here for?
That's what I was gonna ask.
So the thing that I want to say here right now, because if it's based on the 90s Gulf War, right? So when the coalition, kicked Saddam Hussein out of Kuwait, there is interesting special forces style missions that you could do about the SAS and the US Special Forces who went behind enemy lines and took out the Scud missile launchers and stuff like that. So there's lots. Contextually speaking, making Call of Duty open world in that setting maybe makes sense. Right. Obviously, you want to have the big set piece moments in and amongst that. But if you're talking about conflicts that lend itself well to that premise, that is a good one. The issue that I have with this is that I'm like, have they looked at the really flashy images that people do of like Ghost Recon Breakpoint where they take the hood off and it looks really impressive on a base level, but when you get to it mechanically it falls apart? Because those open combat missions in Modern Warfare 3, the AI were crap.
Yeah.
Absolutely crap. And I don't think, I don't know, like Treyarch have not let me down campaign-wise. I kind of thought Cold War was a bit hit or miss, even though it did have sexy Robert Redford standing guy. So I don't know. It's just
that's
not
just
great.
just as a bridge between whatever you're about to say, because you play way more COD than I do. Even though I try and play one every year, I didn't play Modern Warfare 3. That was the only one I've missed in like over 10 years or something. But that's the thing. It's like, what do you want? Because you played a Warzone as well. Do you think this is them looking at Warzone, the vehicles in Warzone, like the fact that you are going between a first-person shooter model and vehicle stuff and whatever, and then being like, well, how do we make that into the campaign? And it also saves them time on curating cutscene set-piece stuff.
Absolutely. I think they've got the foundations there. They've spent so much time and money and resources on Warzone anyway to keep it updated with open world mechanics. On top of that, they've had DLC and now the open world zombies, where they've introduced more mission structures that you would find in a campaign. Pretty much just like side missions from a Far Cry game, but like the template is there, so I can see the incentive to capitalize on that, because I do think Warzone is starting to eclipse regular multiplayer in what the average person thinks of when they think of the name Call of Duty. So it would maybe make sense to focus on those mechanics and the openness, parachuting, or what have you, driving around these locations, and whether that will make people happy, because I feel like what people like about Call of Duty generally is that it has those three strong pillars, and you're getting something different in the campaign that you get from multiplayer, that you get from zombies, and now that you get from Warzone as well. So to sort of blur those lines makes me wonder about the value and the impact of each one of those.
You obliterate the unique identity of each game. You're absolutely correct there. The biggest issue of Call of Duty Vanguard is that you had a World War II set game that was boring and felt like it was behooved to the standards of the modern games. So you have stuff where you can customize a Thompson submachine gun to have like ridiculous laser sights and extended mags and like clip barrels and stuff like that, which is really stupid. That's my big concern with the Gulf War game, is that it wasn't really the era of tactical, like Picatinny rails and like ACOG scopes and like laser sights and stuff like that. Like, that wasn't really a thing. So whenever I look at Call of Duty now, even if it's going to have a compelling setting, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. That's not been done before. I feel like it's all that amorphous. It's moving to that amorphous Warzone identity, where you had that in the campaign for Modern Warfare 3, where you had, you can pick up this specific gun in a crate, and unlock that little endorphin boost in your brain and do that, and you can attack that. I think that is where it's heading.
I think they've messed up previously by not allowing all of these different studios with their own unique sub-franchises, in allowing them to really stretch the wings of those sub-franchises and create that identity that you mentioned. And over the past few years, especially in looking at the roadmap going forward, Call of Duty as an entity has become this one big homogenous combination of all of these different developers and all of these different sub-franchises. Like, even now, while you do have main developers in Call of Duty, there's about 8 other studios, and some of those main studios working on it. You'll have Sledgehammer Games working on Modern Warfare 4. You'll have Treyarch coming in to do like the ranked mode or a zombies mode for it. That kind of approach to development is already happening, and it's seeping into not only the gameplay modes that they're prioritizing, but even like the look of each game. You know, if you boot up Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 now, you'll just get Call of Duty as a logo.
Yeah, it's a launcher thing.
It won't be specific, and you can launch Modern Warfare 3 or Modern Warfare 2 or whatever from the menu, but they're really trying to, like I said, homogenize sort of everything and centralize everything into a platform rather than individual releases. And you can even see that in behind the scenes decisions, like them pushing every studio now to use Infinity Ward's engine, whereas in previous years, like everyone would have their own twist on it, or Treyarch would have entirely like their own customized version of it. Now it's just all in one engine, and that's not necessarily to stifle creativity, I don't think. It's just to ensure that this massive machine
Lego system
speaks to each other, right? Like everything speaks to each other, because Warzone is going to continue as new games come out, and those new games need to feed into Warzone, and Warzone needs to feed into those new games. And if you don't have everything unified, that is a massive headache, like we saw when Warzone 1 launched. We had Cold War coming in and Vanguard coming in, and it was just so much stuff that was grafted onto a system that wasn't intended to support it that it eventually crumbled.
Also, so many overlapping live service plans as well. Like, you're planning multiple years of seasons for games that then overlap with the next game coming out, and it's like on the servers are still live for multiple things. I always thought or at least going into the Microsoft acquisition, that they would relax some of this stuff, and I wonder if they've relaxed it in regards to the size of the campaigns that are being made, because in theory, Call of Duty HQ is still the future of COD, where you have you download a launcher for free, and then you boot into different strands of Call of Duty from that screen, and you pay for different things, whether it's a campaign or whatever it is. Whether that is still the future, like what Ubisoft's doing with Assassin's Creed and Assassin's Creed Infinity. And then maybe, because you were saying, they have campaigns, or they have studios lined up for 2027, 2028, maybe they are ostensibly story DLC packs for this wider platform of COD that just lives on Game Pass, and you get it if you have Game Pass. I don't know, but I'm just like, within that, we've had multiple console generation turnovers for the last, 15 plus years that they've been doing the annual turnover, and keeping up with that, like, that's a Herculean, painful task to pull off.
They're leaving memories behind. Like, I feel like if you look back on the last decade of Call of Duty, you'd look at Modern Warfare. It's like the big lasting. Black Ops 2 as well. In the last decade. Oh, that was 2012, wasn't it? So not even in that bracket. From there on, you got stuff that no one cares about, like Call of Duty Ghosts, Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, which obviously I think reviewed
like
pretty well,
Warfare,
but like no one's really remembering it. Stuff like Advanced Warfare, Black Ops 3, these really kind of anonymous, blurry, sludgy games. And
that we needed something. So
I mean, not that it will care, because it's always going to sell bajillions and squillions, but it's just kind of like, come on, it could be so easily better than it is.
No, absolutely. And you know what, Scott? Like, I was about 6 months ago, I was probably with you, and I maybe naively thought, well, Microsoft's going to come in, they're going to like assess the issues that we've been talking about so long with this fractured development cycle, and people getting overworked and being dragged off projects and called in at the last minute to put out fires. But I just don't have faith in that anymore. Like, looking at this roadmap and looking at them like laying off a bunch of people from Activision Blizzard, and the way they've kind of spoken about COD, it feels like they're going to be way more hands off than I maybe naively thought they would. And it's kind of just going to be business as usual, even without Bobby Kotick at the helm. Maybe it's just that much of a moneymaker that they don't want to interfere much, and unless there's something major happens, they'll keep pumping these games out because they make a lot of money. I do have two things to maybe end this with.
Absolutely.
Two little details and two little questions. One is that next year's Call of Duty, which so far does not have a developer, the rumors about that is that it's going to be a direct sequel to Black Ops 2, and I know what you're thinking. Doesn't Black Ops 3 already exist?
And Black Ops 4.
Well, no, they're going back to the well, like what Ewan was saying, of things that they know work, because they've got so many anonymous sub-franchises that have been that have came and went in the years since. So yeah, that's apparently going to be a direct sequel spin-off to Black Ops 2 that remasters all of the Black Ops 2 multiplayer maps and launches with them in the same way that MW3 just launched with all of MW2's maps. I think this sucks, especially if you're selling it as a premium, like, full price game. If it's a DLC, if it's an add-on, or if it's even a remaster, that's fine. This, to me, with only 20 months on the clock, by the way, is crazy. In my second little detail, which is a question to you guys. Tom Henderson in the tweet mentions that High Moon Studios was in the running at one point to make the game, and now that he thinks it's going to be Treyarch Games. But like, who, if anyone, would you want to lumber with that project and bring into the COD fold as a main developer out of Activision's toy box? Because they already work. Everyone in Activision already works on COD.
Yeah, they're flat out.
High Moon, whoever else. So
just plug in and play, don't you? I mean, they're all kind of locked into that grim apparatus.
I want to, because I don't have the quote on hand, but when the deal was going through for the Microsoft stuff, maybe it was just a wider, vague statement that Phil Spencer made, but there was something he said about addressing annual release cycles, and maybe we would relax them or something like that. And in terms of the developers specifically, I still feel like Raven are just mining away at the walls in the content mines and the COD mines. And I don't want to give them this project. I want to see them removed from it. There's no one that I would want to put under this churn. I want to free it up. Like, even if the endpoint of New Age COD is the thing that I mentioned, where you're just making smaller releases for an online multiplayer or an online service, that maybe frees up the human cost of this.
Yeah.
But it's a cadence to a franchise that doesn't need to be here anymore.
The Black Ops 2 stuff as well. The thing that I'm really confused about is that obviously Modern Warfare's reboot worked very well, because not only was it playing on the nostalgia of, what are revered as the greatest Call of Duty games of all time, major cultural touchstones in terms of the late 2000s video game dork culture. And Black Ops has the same kind of notoriety with its characters. You have Reznov, you have Woods and stuff. Cold War played with that mythos a little bit as well, and then it also introduced some branching timeline stuff with the Modern Warfare games, which really was confusing. And do the kids even care about Woods and Mason and everything now? Like, this to me is like really, really weirdly desperate. And a direct sequel to Black Ops 2, like, people can play those games because they were on PlayStation 4, so you can play them on PS5 or PS4, whatever you own right now. But even so, really, really weird. Yeah. I don't really understand this, because surely you would just reboot it if you were gonna want to do that again.
It makes no sense to me either if this coming Call of Duty is also a Black Ops game that is kind of maybe trying to do that, I suppose, with Treyarch having 4 years on it, to then immediately follow that up with the Black Ops 2 spin-off sequel remaster thing. That seems strange.
What comes to mind for me, this is from years ago, from like 2017-ish, when the Call of Duty movies were being mentioned.
Oh, yeah.
And the different eras of COD were being mentioned, as where you might set a series of movies that would all talk to each other, one of them being World War II.
Was Michael Bay going to be involved in that? Was that the Ghost Recon movies that he was involved in?
I think it was the Recon stuff.
Yeah.
But that idea of you have all these different timeline placements for Call of Duty that you can sort of set things in, and it's either the World War II stuff or the boots on the ground modern day stuff, or the futuristic stuff like Black Ops, or even past that you got Infinite Warfare. They have sort of 4 or 5 main chunks of COD that you can plug stuff into. I wonder whether that's always been the overarching thing, because the game that leaked, was that at the start of January that it leaked that they were doing another one that was just like Infinite Warfare? There was another one that was set in space.
Oh, the Future Warfare that was cancelled, wasn't it?
It was like Future Warfare or whatever. And it's like, okay, you were trying to plug another one into one of these 5 buckets that you have. And I just wonder if you're trying to manage this whole thing, that it's like, okay, what's a plate we haven't spun in a while? This one's starting to fall down. The Black Ops 2 era hasn't been tapped into in a little while. We had Advanced Warfare and Infinite Warfare, but they kind of danced on both sides of that timeline. We can do another Black Ops 2 era one, and call it, like, if Black Ops Cold War didn't sell terribly, that naming structure is horrific, but you can do Call of Duty Black Ops and then something else.
Yeah.
Black Ops Nebula or whatever the hell, and you just do something there.
My issue is, you're right, that they haven't really gone back to the well in a big way and remastered, Black Ops 2 in its entirety, or returned to that point
just
in the
do
timeline
a campaign box
necessarily.
Set or something.
Yep, but they have nibbled on that timeline. They have, like, for instance, already brought back some of the iconic multiplayer maps and put them in other games multiple times. It's not like they haven't.
You want some more Nuketown?
Yeah, it's not like they've just like left it and they haven't touched it in a while, which makes it more confusing to me, because they want to have this nostalgic swell while already having stabs at it previously. It's why Modern Warfare 2's remastered maps being in Modern Warfare 3 to me didn't make sense, because those maps have already been integrated into Warzone. We've seen some of them return. We've seen those weapons be mentioned in, usable in certain scenarios, whether it it might not have been in the full way of completely remastering it, but like you've gone back to that well numerous times. You released the remastered campaign for Modern Warfare 2. Like, it's not a thing that ever went away.
No, that's true. It's just that thing of like I said, trying to keep up with a certain franchise churn, a certain franchise turnover. Like, how do you have a new installment every year? And it's waxed and waned in regards to how important the campaign side of things is. That was what I always went to. I've played thousands of hours of Call of Duty Online, but I always liked to see what they did for the campaign. And then some years we started to see across the last few years, they just couldn't hit that box anymore. Like Black Ops 4, it didn't have one, and then Modern Warfare 3's was the open world kind of, middle ground.
Black Ops 4.
Yeah, so did they. I mean, they had that because that was them chasing Overwatch. That was in the shadow of Overwatch. How do we make COD into a hero shooter? And they did have all the cutscenes worked out, and there was a lot more for that potential campaign that didn't come together. And it's just, like, what do people want from COD? They clearly love Warzone, they love the multiplayer, and maybe campaign just falls to the wayside.
Sorry, you go on.
No, because I think I might be about to say what you're about to say, but I think that COD's identity has shifted to the point now where this nostalgia stuff is having diminishing returns. I think, like you mentioned before, like Warzone is the thing now.
Yeah.
Warzone is the thing that everything is in service of working towards now. People are spending 30 quid to play as Nicki Minaj in a Call of Duty game. Like,
yeah, we are.
Like people are not invested in the soaps and the prices of yesteryear. It's all about, so the idea of going back to that, rather than just commit to the bit, man. I can't stand this like just half-assing it. Just commit to the bit, because I also hate this half foot in the past thing, because it's so blatantly cynical to me. Of like, oh, do you remember Mason? Do you remember Reds as well? Do you remember Reds? And I'm just like, yeah, I remember them. I had my fun with them.
Yeah, I was there at the time.
They can go away now.
It's why Modern Warfare 3 is so insulting to me, because to its credit, Modern Warfare 2019 wasn't a perfect game by any means. It wasn't even a perfect reboot, but it felt fresh. It wasn't doing that jingly keys, look at this nostalgia play thing. It was, sometimes mentioning older characters or reinventing them, but it had all new maps, it had an all new engine, it had an all new sort of game feel to it, a new flow of gameplay. It really brought a lot to the table, not to mention when Warzone dropped alongside it a few months later. And we've just seen that approach completely be 180'd over the past few years, and then we end up with Modern Warfare 3, which is just, look at this nostalgia. Look at all these characters you like. We're going to just do the beats.
What if we killed Soap again?
What if we just did it again? That would be fun. But yeah, going back to what you were saying, Ewan, what I was going to get into is, you asked there, like, what is Call of Duty? Like, what do they want it to be? What do the fans want it to be? I think at this point, you cannot answer that, because Call of Duty is so much now. It is Warzone, it is DMZ, it is zombies, it is a single-player story, it is an open-world story, it is Spec Ops.
Can you rephrase this point as Mambo number 5?
I'll do that in the next podcast. It's all of these things, and you'll probably have 10 million people playing Warzone who have no idea who like Gaz or Soap or Ghost are, outside of the skins they can play in the matches and the cutscenes that you get at the start of every new season. Like, I do fully agree that, at one point the campaigns felt important. People were following those stories of Black Ops, of Modern Warfare. They wanted to see what was next. Now they are just a part of a Call of Duty machine that has its focus and has its popularity centered elsewhere.
It's also like, the importance of a Call of Duty campaign was fundamentally related to what the importance of stories in gaming. I have a whole wider thought, and I'll do a video on this at some point, about how gaming has nothing left to prove. And since then, we've got boring stuff, because we're not chasing like messaging in games anymore, like the indie boom of the early 2010s. Like, gaming was chasing cinematics for so long, proving that it could hang alongside Hollywood. We've done that. Like, we've proven that a game can make you cry. We've done that. Like, that whole thing, all of that stuff is out the way now, and we're just in the money era. And it's like the idea of a Call of Duty campaign, that idea of rivaling a Michael Bay or a Bruckheimer or whatever, just isn't on people's radars anymore.
I know how you save Call of Duty.
Go on.
You get playable JFK, Fidel Castro, and Richard Nixon back again. You do a spin-off of their zombie mode from Black Ops. And it's just it's just a co-op. You all get to play as them with their stupid little cornball lines. And Call of Duty does not have the gumption for this anymore.
That's $1 billion idea. Do you want to know what's a $2 billion idea? Do you want to know how I can elevate that?
Go on, hit me.
All of those characters are involved, and also, so is Nicki Minaj. As well. $2 billion. Thank you, Mr. Activision. I'll take it via check.